What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys for the Tad the Side. And Tad, schedule's out. We actually have dates to all the opponents. I mean, I know a lot of people sort of like, what's the big deal with the schedule release? It's like, yeah, you know the opponents in advance, but it's nice to know when you're playing certain opponents. And then also a big factor is like, when is your bye week? Because I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, Ted. I'm not a fan of the early bye week. I either like it to be like right in the middle of the season or towards the back half of the season too. So
what's your cutoff week for that? Like, what's the week where you're like, oh, that's too early to like perfect?
For me, too early is like, I think there was a couple teams that had like week 5 last year. I was like, that's way too early for me.
I was going to say week 6 for me, like week 6 up.
Week 6 is reasonable. Week 6 is
week
reasonable
1,
too.
like if I get week 6, I don't hate it. I don't love it. But anything after week 6, I'm like, perfect.
That is perfect. Yeah. I like somewhere that 7, 8, 9 range, especially with 17 games on the regular season schedule. I think, that 7, 8, 9 range is a perfect midway point. But yeah, anything later than that, I'm also going to take too, because that's
true.
Right as you get close to like, potentially playing for a playoff spot and seeding and all that stuff. It's like nice to get that extra week of break and just sort of relax, recharge the batteries, and then come back strong to close out the season and hopefully make a good playoff run too. So
there's a very careful balance, because if I'm not mistaken, the Colts bye week is week 14. And I'm like, oh God, that's late. Okay. I'm like, we may be screwed by then, because, and especially we'll get into this, they have a very tough stretch leading into that bye week. And so like, you got to hit that sweet spot. And man, like NFL schedulers, they don't mess around, man. They screwed over quite a few teams this year.
Yeah, we'll get into all of that, obviously. So we'll talk about the NFL schedule, some of our favorite games on the schedule, the entire schedule. We'll dive into some of the primetime games, both on Thursday night, Monday night, as well as Sunday night. And then we'll get into our own teams' schedule as far as what we like and what we don't like. And of course, becoming a regular thing now with all 32 NFL teams' schedule release videos. We'll talk about some of our favorites, some of our least favorites, and just, some of the more interesting ones out there. But with the schedule officially out now, I'm pretty sure, Tad, that our good friends at Underdog Fantasy have probably updated their NFL odds, because they do season long as well as they do game by game. So once the season begins, you can obviously bet on the individual games and week to week to make your picks there. But they also have the season-long bets as well. So you can bet on things like, Patrick Mahomes over under, 45 and a half passing touchdowns. Those are things that you can see on Underdog Fantasy as well. It's not just the individual games. So they got you covered there. They got you covered across all other sports. We got the MLB season going on right now. The Mavericks and the Nuggets, they're going into, the Wolves and the Nuggets, they're going to 7 games.
The Mavs are closing out tomorrow night.
We'll see about that. That could possibly go longer too. But yeah, we have a game 7 in that series. So I mean, the NBA playoffs are still in full swing there. We got a lot of things that you're betting on. I'm pretty sure the Olympics, with that coming on in the summer, maybe there'll be some Olympic related bets as well. But yeah, guys, Underdog Fantasy is your number one source to bet on all of your sports needs. You make anywhere between 2 and 5 different prop bet picks across whatever you're comfortable with. The more picks you make, more potential money you can win. And Underdog Fantasy has given us a promo code that we want to share with you to get into the action. Use our promo code DESAI, DESAI. You can double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500, courtesy of our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. And with that, I mean, Tad, if you were to hypothetically put in that $500 using our promo code only on the first deposit, the initial deposit, you can get that doubled up dollar for dollar, so you can bet with up to $1,000 on their betting platform. The website's easy to use. You can use their mobile device apps as well, both Apple devices as well as Android. It's a really intuitive app, as well as the website. So whatever you're comfortable with, it's a really, very user-friendly user interface compared to some other betting websites that I've used and applications. So, I mean, this is very good and really fun to use. So, guys, use that promo code once again, DESAI, DESAI, to double up on your deposit of $10 more, up to $500, courtesy of our good friends at Underdog Fantasy.
And I'll say this, I was shaking for our YouTube audience. The reason I was shaking my head when you were giving me that, hypothetical of like, oh, if you put it in $500, you would have $1,000 is because actually I swear to God, this is 100% a true story. Is as I'm driving home today, I got an alert from Underdog. And usually it's like, oh, so-and-so is out, which is another reason why it's a
Yeah,
great betting
they give
app.
you great updates, exactly, to help you with betting.
Secondary Bleacher Report app, basically. But I thought that's what it was. And then I saw Caitlin Clark. And I was like, oh, okay. Is she hurt or something? Because I don't follow the WNBA. And so I looked at it at a stoplight because I never text and drive. And here's the crazy thing. They go, special offer. Caitlin Clark, I once again, 100% true story. Over under, Caitlin Clark, half a point.
Yeah,
expires in 1 hour.
That's the way they want to get you into it. They're very, user-friendly app, and so they want to get you into the action. Some of those freebie bets, like, I mean, you see it during the NFL season too. Like, I remember seeing Josh Jacobs during the NFL season last year over under half a yard rushing. So I mean, it's like they want to get you into the action.
But here's the nice thing though, is that it's not like one of those, like a typical betting site where the payout is ridiculous. Like you put $20 on it, it's like, hey, you made $2, and you're like, okay. It's more fun because what they do is they give you an easy bet like that, and they just go, hey, you just got to place, 2 more bets tonight on top of that one, and then you pay out. So it's not even like, you make less winnings. It's just, here's one very easy bet that you're going to win. Just make 2 other ones. And even if the other ones are super easy too, you still make money. Like I've said this many times before, and I will keep saying it as long as they are a sponsor. And frankly, even after they're not, they are the most better friendly site I've ever seen. It's a fantastic partnership. I love working with them. So absolutely check out underdogfantasy.com.
100%. So Tad, as we're talking about, obviously the NFL schedule, we want to get into the schedule here. And let's start with both of our favorite teams here. So, I mean, when you got the Colts schedule, what did you think about it? Like, I mean, did you like it? Did you hate it? I mean, I know you're sort of talking about the late bye week. So, I mean, just like overall, how'd you feel about it?
We are so fucked.
Okay. All right.
Man. All right. So let's go to my favorite game. So it's actually at the perfect point of the season. It kind of goes into what you were talking about of like, where does this game land? Because if this was going to be like a week 1 or week 2 game, okay, fine, good early test. If it was going to be a late season game, at that point, like, who really cares? If we're going to struggle as much as I think we are. But the point where I think those bastards did this on purpose. The point where the NFL put this game is going to be the make it or break it game for us. And I think it's going to be heavily advertised as the game of the week, assuming Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. And that is week 7. The Indianapolis Colts play the Miami Dolphins. And here's why I think this is a make it or break it game, because at that point, I think the Colts are going to be 3-3. So we play, I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head. We play the Steelers, the Jags, the Texans, and 2 other tough teams. The Titans are one of them. So I think we beat the Steelers. I think we beat the Jags. We don't beat the Jags because we never beat the Jags.
So I got it for you here. You play the Texans, you play the Packers, then you play the Bears, the Steelers, the Jaguars, the Titans, and then you get to week 7 with the Dolphins.
So Steelers, Titans, and Bears, I think, are wins. The other ones are all losses. So I think we go into this game 3-3. So this is it, where it's like, are the Colts pretenders or contenders? And this game will decide it, especially because, get this, Amir, it's not so much that game that I'm worried about. It's the stretch after that. That is absolutely brutal. Are you ready for this? And I know you're looking at it.
I am looking at the schedule, yeah.
And tell me this is not brutal. So for our audience, they play the Bills, the Texans, the Jets, and the Lions. All of them after that. That is a brutal stretch.
You also look at the fact that you also include the Patriots in there. You got 4 of their next 6 games. I'm just saying it for this point. 4 of your next 6 games are on the road too. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so that's kind of the thing. It's like, hey, if they beat the Dolphins, that's a very nice morale boost going into that very tough stretch that maybe could kind of project them through that. But if they lose against the Dolphins, all of a sudden they're 3-4 and everyone's like, oh, okay, they're pretenders. They don't, they get peppered with questions from the press of just like, oh, where does the season go from here? I'll say it affects the mood and everything.
Sure.
I think the Dolphins is the make it or break it game of the season. I'm going to be a nervous wreck for that game. And so that's my favorite game because it's one of those things that's either going to be the best time to be a fan because if we beat the Dolphins, I'm going to be elated, or I'm going to be just absolutely devastated. And speaking of absolutely devastated, for my least favorite Colts game, do me a favor. Go ahead and scroll down to week 18.
I'm there.
Okay. Who do we play?
Jacksonville. The Jacksonville.
Why?
At home.
Why? Why do they keep doing this to us? I emotionally, and for people for thinking this is a bit, it's really not. I swear to God, it's not. I cannot put up with 2 years in a row of our final game of the season against an AFC South opponent knocking us out of playoff contention. I can't deal with it. I cannot do that emotionally. It will break me. I am so nervous for that game, especially because it's Jacksonville and we never beat Jacksonville.
It's true. I don't know why you can never beat Jacksonville.
I am so scared. The level of fear I have for that game cannot be overstated. Like, it's just, I am so mad. That was, and again, with the placement of games, of like, how dare you, NFL? How dare you? That game really worries me because I do think the Colts are going to be as typical Colts. They're not going to be, in the running for the division. This is all of a sudden turned into arguably the best division in football.
There's one of them for sure.
So I think they're going to be in play for a wild card 100%. But that's what makes that last week so much worse is because if you're in play for a wild card, it matters up until week 18. And we play goddamn Jacksonville. I am so not looking forward to that game.
Well, buddy, the last week of the season is usually a divisional game, but yeah, surprisingly,
but why Jacksonville? Give us Houston. Give us.
You'd rather face Houston?
Please. 100%. I'd rather play Houston
because they'll be resting people by then. Is that what you think?
Yeah, exactly right.
That's fair.
That is exactly right. Or hell, give us Tennessee. If that was Tennessee, I'd be popping champagne on camera right now.
I would have taken Tennessee too.
But
that makes sense.
You give us the people that always beat our ass.
And then, yeah, like you talked about that week 14 bye week. I'm personally not too upset with it. Like I said, I like that sort of later in the season.
But the whole problem is after that tough stretch.
That is true. So it's but that's coming nicely too. What's like after that stretch too. So that's
I guess. But at that point, I could totally see us being like 3-7, being like, all right, here are we taking the top 10.
That is fair. So yeah, jumping to my favorite team, San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, obviously. I hate you, you contending fuck.
Interesting thing here, Tad. We start with the Monday night game, and then the very last Monday night football game of the season is also a Niners game. So it's a very interesting bookend to the Monday night football schedule of just like you start with the Jets on opening night, Monday, September 9th, and then they close with the Detroit Lions on December 30th. So I'm not sure about the Jets game because that's going to be very much a question mark, hinging on obviously Aaron Rodgers and just all of that and just how it's going to look. And the homecoming with Robert Saleh and some of those guys, Solomon Thomas obviously being a former Niner player. So, I mean, that'll be very interesting to see. Obviously, we have Aaron Rodgers hurting himself in a Monday Night Football game last season, 4 plays in. So it's like, is he going to see like ghosts or demons or whatever? Like, is that going to be a whole storyline? Of course it's going to be a storyline, but like, that's going to be interesting to see too. So I'm not sure about that game, but yeah, obviously you got the rematch of the NFC title game way at the end of the season. It's definitely going to be for playoff implications as far as seeding is going to be concerned, as far as like, home field advantage or no home field advantage, whatever it is. So that's going to be a very interesting season, interesting game to watch at the very end of the season. But my favorite game of the season schedule here, surprisingly, it's the Chiefs game on October 20th of week 7. So also week 7, where you're sort of pegging it there. So right at the midpoint point of the season, like you were sort of mentioning, it's like this is where you get a sort of good barometer as far as like, is your team a contender or is your team a pretender? Like, I mean, we saw this in 2019 where the Niners went to the Super Bowl. The very next year, they got ravaged by injuries. They were nowhere near contending. So I'm curious to see, like, if they stay healthy, like, will they be like, maybe only 1 or 2 losses at that point, or will they be a little bit further along? Historically, the last couple of seasons, the Niners have started slow, and then all of a sudden they go on this run at the very back half of the season, and they become a 1 or 2 seed or top 3 seed, whatever it is, right? So it's the same thing going to happen this year. But here's the facts here for you, Tad. Obviously, the Niners have lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl twice now, but Kyle Shanahan, since becoming head coach of San Francisco 49ers, he has never beaten a Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs team. I know it's sort of one and the same, but just like he hasn't even beat up in the regular season. So this is one of those, as the kids say, Pixar didn't happen.
It's the kryptonite to his Superman.
Yeah, exactly. It's the picks didn't happen. I'll believe it when I see it. So it's like, I think they just need that little bit of just like, okay, we beat them once. Sure, as a regular season, but it's like we have it on tape that we beat them, but we did this. So it's like, in case we get a third matchup in the Super Bowl potentially of the Chiefs and the Niners at least can sort of go back to that tape and be like, all right, what did we do in this game that we could finally, get over that hump, get the monkey off our back, and actually beat them in the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying for sure that's going to be my Super Bowl pick right now, but I was like, potentially if that does happen, at least they beat them in the regular season. So we'll see about that. But like I said, that's a good midway point to understand as far as where these two teams see. Obviously, you got the Chiefs with their additions. They trade away L'Jarius Sneed. Is that going to affect their defense? But then they add on their offense to possibly, replicate what they had in 2018 when the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns and he was the MVP. So it's like, are they trying to replicate that with Xavier Worthy and Marquise Hollywood-Brown? So it's like, I'm curious to see how that offense is going to adjust itself. So it's a very interesting matchup there, week 7.
So I feel like every year there's a game where not officially, but kind of unofficially, the NFL is always making like, hey, this is the game of the season.
It could be.
This feels like it's going to be this season's, game of the season. With, like you said, like the Super Bowl matchup with, we know both these teams, barring any major injuries, both these teams are going to be good. And especially because, and I'll be interested. I do think that this will be interesting. My official prediction is Rashee Rice will be suspended for 4 games. Why?
Only 4 games. Okay.
Here's why.
Game?
Because of this game.
Okay.
Because that gives him 3 games to kind of warm up, and then he'll be in full form, and that offense will be figured out with him back in it in time for this game. So I'm giving Rashee Rice, depending on this whole nightclub thing, if he really did be. By the way, I looked up that nightclub here in Dallas. It's not a good nightclub. I don't know why you're there on a Monday night, but anyway, that's a whole separate episode. And I do mean episode. We could do a whole episode on Rashee Rice. But bottom line being is I think that the NFL is kind of prepping for and this is always my benchmark. They're hoping this is Rams Chiefs part 2. Like, it feels like they've been dying for that game for quite a while now.
And I really don't doubt, because this is a Fox game on top of it. It is part of the later slate. This is going to be, they call it America's Game of the Week. And I bet you the number 1 broadcast is going to be on that. So it's going to be Tom Brady, because he has now taken the number 1 broadcasting duties from Greg Olsen, which I feel bad for, because Greg Olsen was sensational doing the play-by-play with, Rex Burkhardt there. So Greg Burkhardt, sorry, Rex Burkhead was the player for running back. Yeah. Greg Burkhardt, that was my bad. So I really feel bad.
Rex Burkhead from what college?
Nebraska?
Damn it!
Yeah. Let's go. So I really don't doubt that they'll probably give that, the number 1 duties to them. So Tom Brady can call this game with obviously Brock Purdy being a late round pick, obviously very late round pick, very similar to him. Then obviously got Patrick Mahomes, the multiple MVP, Super Bowl MVP, all that stuff. So it's like, that's naturally a gift for Tom Brady. Talking about both these quarterbacks, it's like, it's for sure going to happen.
Hold on. Got to update the banner here. Over under 4 times that Tom Brady mentions that he's the only man to beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's going to be over.
Oh, it's so going to be over. He's going to bring it up at least once a quarter, and then his producer's going to get in his ear once and be like, bring it up again.
But yeah, so that is my favorite game of the Niners schedule here. I didn't really go into my least favorite game because,
because you don't have one because you're a contender.
That's fair. That's fair. I will add though, like I was reading this article, I guess, like about like teams who have the most rest compared to the team that they're facing. And I guess the Niners have the worst at like -20 or whatever. I forgot what their rating was, but essentially what it boiled down to is the Niners are the only team this season facing 4 teams coming off their bye week to play us.
Oh, that's interesting.
The only other team to have multiple teams to face coming off of a bye week, your Indianapolis Colts. They're going to face they're going to face 3 teams, if I remember correctly, coming off their bye weeks during the season. But yeah, the Niners are the only team that will be facing 4 teams coming off their respective bye weeks to face us that following week.
All right. Hold on.
That'll be interesting.
Hold on. I had to update the banner again. Over under 5 games Anthony Richardson plays before someone kills him.
Oh, God. Under.
The under for sure. He is so dead.
Oh gosh. But yeah, before we jump off the Colts and Niners talk, I don't know if you saw that article or like the viral media post had about why Adonai Mitchell chose number 10.
Oh, I love that because of the 10 receivers. As soon as I saw that quote, I was like, I love him.
I was like, that's great. That's perfect. Yeah, because I bet you he's gonna be a solid receiver in this league.
I realized I didn't finish the
him in the second round.
sentence.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so for our listeners and viewers, it's because exactly 10 receivers were drafted in front of him. That's some Tom Brady shit right there. That's awesome. I was like, let's go.
Little bit. All right, Ted. So let's jump into the rest of the schedule. All other games, outside of our two respective teams. Like, I mean, what are some of your games that you're looking forward to? It could either be, primetime slate games, Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, or it could be completely just random games that could be good. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I just have 1, 2, 3, 4 to go through real quick that really stuck out to me because obviously there are way more interesting games than just 4 of them, but these are the 4 that really just like kind of caught my attention. First one you've already touched on, Lions 49ers week 17. That's going to have
be a good one. That should be a good one.
Massive seeding implications. I don't think it will have massive will they or won't they make the playoff implications. I think both of you guys would be pretty set there, but that's
like
a rare case.
Barring injuries. Yeah, I really doubt that there will be any sort of issues about will they or will they not make the playoffs. I agree with that.
Oh, and before I go any further in my analysis, grade the Jared Goff contract.
I was a little bit surprised on that one.
So was I.
Actually, yeah, I really thought because I remember we talked about this, especially when they drafted Hendon Hooker last year.
That was the first thought when I saw the headlines. I was like, who's really being like, damn it, it's Hendon Hooker. Because he was like, I was a year away.
Because I brought this up when we did our like post-draft analysis or whatever. I was like, the Lions had an out with Jared Goff's contract after this season. So they could have like got up practically scot-free as far as like dead cap money with this contract. And they could have moved on to Hendon Hooker, which like we both talked about. If that guy was healthy, he probably would have been in the top 3 selections of quarterbacks taken in last year's draft. So I'm just like, maybe they're just not seeing something with him. Maybe they want to see him grow a little bit more under Jared Goff. I have no idea what it is, but I was a little bit shocked. And I was surprised that they decided to commit to him.
This is a separate discussion, so we won't go too much further, but if Hendon Hooker was in this past year's draft, he would have gone to the Vikings.
I can see that happening.
100%. But I'd give it a B-. I thought it was a lot of money, but I get it of like, hey, consistency is key. Like just, go with the evil not the one you don't. So I get it, but that was a lot of money.
It was.
So wait, hold on. You never gave a letter grade.
I'd probably say a B. I think a B.
Okay, fair enough. But anyway, so yes, barring injury, Jared Goff versus Brock Purdy. Speaking of which, if Brock Purdy gets hurt, who's your backup?
As of right now, I think it's Brandon Allen.
The guy from Arkansas?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
God help you. God help you guys. Even though Shanahan can probably make that guy look like the second coming. But yeah, barring injury, this has massive seeding potential, but also it's more of just like the kind of Lions factor in it that makes me more interested in it because, Emmer, I'm not trying to scare you, dude, but you are facing a Dan Campbell team that blew a lead against you in the playoffs last year. Watch out for your knees. He's going for them to either eat them or break them. I don't know. Maybe both. Break them, then eat them. So, like, I think the Lions are going to be a very, very scary team that week. It's going to be the rare case where we know both these teams are making the playoffs 2 weeks out, but they're still playing all the starters because I think Dan Campbell's almost quite literally going to be out for blood.
I don't doubt it. I think it's going to be a very, highly contested match. I'm pretty sure it's going to be very chippy as well, for sure, between both teams, offensively and defensively. So, yeah, I don't doubt that all teams are going to be giving their full effort. And, yeah, the Lions maybe a little bit extra for sure. I can see that happening.
Little bit.
But I totally forgot the Niners side, the Pastronaut. Josh Dobbs is a member of the Niners. So he's
a Niner?
Yeah, I totally forgot about
that. Oh, my God. Shanahan is going to bring Dobbs magic. What was the nickname for him?
Like I said, the Pastronaut.
Well, yeah, but there was some other like Dobbs, dynamic Dobbs or something like that. There was some alliteration. But anyway, man, Josh Dobbs is kind of like the closest the NFL has ever gotten Jeremy Lin. Huh?
A little bit.
I can see that coming back. But anyway, speaking of placement, again, with what you brought up at the very beginning of the episode, like, why are we so excited about all this? This placement of this game was very interesting. Bills, Texans, week 5. is going to be fascinating because it's the question I feel like we all have about the Bills. Are they still contenders? Can they put up with the best? And it really feels like within a season, those teams have kind of traded places of like, Texans kind of suck, but there's talent there, to like the Bills are one of the best contenders in the AFC, where those roles have completely switched. Where now, if the Bills can beat the Texans in week 5, that answers our question, are you still a contender? Where if they lose, it's like, okay, the book's kind of closed on the Bills. That was a very tight window. You didn't make the most of it. Sorry. And also, of course, you get the Diggs revenge game. If I'm a Stephon Diggs fantasy manager, woo! Am I starting him that week? Because I think 100%. He's going to go off.
Underdog bets as well. Like, that's the game to definitely do for sure.
I'm glad you brought this up. This was my pick for random game of the season and I was because I didn't look at their schedule beforehand. Bears Commanders week 8, whatever pick 1 plays pick 2. Always notable. Fair. Always That's notable. Fair. Especially, I always love it when the pick 2 outplays pick 1. Not saying I hope that happens, but it's always just great watching First Take that week after, where it's like, should the Bears have taken Jaden Daniels?
Oh, yeah, no, of course.
It's like, no, they shouldn't have. It's like, but he did beat him. And it's just like, oh, God damn it. So that is a definite game that I'll be watching. And then finally, Dolphins, Jets, week 18.
The Jets week
that 18. Absolutely could decide the division, because I think the Bills will be in the running for a wild card by the end of the season, but I think it will be between the Dolphins and Jets for the division, and it would not shock me in the least if that was the decider of the division right there in the very last week. And that's very important to note. That date is TBD.
Yeah,
that could be the Sunday night, Monday night game that gets flexed in there. That would not shock me in the least.
Exactly. Those are 3 solid games for sure. So 3 of the games that I'm sort of looking forward to. Let's start with Monday night. Going to go to week 11. I'm going to go with the Texans and the Cowboys. You got your battle of Texas here, right? Sort of like, a little bit past the midway point of the season. I think we're starting to get an understanding, like I said, about contenders, pretenders. Like, I mean, with all the offseason changes with the Cowboys, are they still going to be like one of the premier teams in the NFC, or is it just going to affect them too much where it's like, running back by committee approach with Zeke and whoever else is there? Is Dak Prescott going to be affected with Michael Gallup, leaving to sign with the Raiders? Like, I mean, is CeeDee Lamb going to be enough there? Like, I mean, just the defense with no more Dan Quinn, is that going to take an effect? So that's going to be all interesting to watch. And then obviously on the flip side, the Texans, like, can they repeat the success that they had from this past season? Or was it really just lightning in a bottle? And now that everybody knows that they're good, they have a target on their back, so they won't be that same team. But yeah, they made some great additions. Obviously, you talked about Stephon Diggs, traded for Joe Mixon, obviously. So they got some good pieces there, made some additions to their defense as well. So I mean, it's like, that's going to be a very good, interesting move there. For both teams, as far as like who's going to be the contender, who's going to be the pretender there. And also we could have potential MVP conversation with both these quarterbacks as well. Like, I mean, if the Cowboys could sort of put aside all the distractions and, Dak can sort of replicate what he did last year, he'll be in the conversation. Obviously we got CJ Stroud, who was the rookie of the year. Now can he take that next step and become an MVP, be a part of that conversation too? So you got that storyline as well between this battle of Texas.
Sorry, I forgot. Which one of us lives in Dallas?
You do.
Are you sure? Because it sounds a lot like you're the one in Dallas. Are you fucking kidding me? Dak Prescott, the MVP consideration? Get out of here.
I'm saying could be. Could be. I don't think for sure he will be.
No, the bigger debate is Dak Prescott the Cowboys' future, let alone the best player in the
That's
entire
a separate storyline, but it's like, I think that's just going to enter that conversation, make it even more magnified with the fact that it's just like he's in the MVP conversation, but then he's playing on the last year of his contract. So it's like, that's going to be interesting to watch.
This is probably a topic that we will touch on the podcast when we get closer to August. But if I was forced to pick a surprise disappointing team of the year, it would be Dallas. I think they've gone, as you've correctly pointed out, they've undergone so many changes, so many, where that's very hard for any team to rebound from, let alone one under the national microscope that Jerry Jones is willingly putting his own team under. And what's the 2 biggest moves they made this offseason? Hey, Zeke's back.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's like, hey, we drafted this Oklahoma tackle that, only played like 70% of the snaps for his college team to be our starting right tackle. Like, this is going to end well. And it's just, they just botched this offseason so badly. So I do think that game could have some interesting implications, but not for any of the ones you noted. I think this could be the game that goes full on Bane to like the Texans are Bane and the Cowboys are Batman, where the Texans can just put the Cowboys right over their knee and just break their back. Of like, this could be the season or could be the game that ends the Cowboys season.
It's very possible. It's very possible, but I really just don't know. They could find a way to string things together, and they could be contenders at that point. But believe me, I'd very much like to be in that boat where they're absolutely, dog shit and they're terrible. Believe me, I would love to see that.
I am 100% down for that.
All right, I'm going to get to the other favorite game, and that is a Thursday night game. Tad, I was actually pretty impressed. The Thursday night football slate is usually the butt of everybody's jokes. But the slate for Thursday Night Football is actually probably the strongest of the prime time slates.
There was a clear concentrated effort by the NFL to start improving that.
Yeah, no, clearly it's like I looked at all the matchups. I was like, I'm actually happy with all of these. There's not one where I'm like, maybe I'm going to skip that one on a weeknight and go to sleep early and something like that. No, it's like, I like most of them. Those were pretty solid games. So this is one of my favorites. It's a week 14 matchup. I know we're talking about the Lions a bit, but there's another team in the NFC North that we should talk about a bit too. The Green Bay Packers and Lions here in week 14. This is their second matchup of the season. So this could very much be a contest to decide who will get that leg up to win the NFC North. Because I think it's going to be a 2-horse race between these two teams in Green Bay and Detroit. We obviously are talking about Jared Goff and the huge contract he got, but Amon-Ra St. Brown got a huge contract, but Sewell got a huge contract. You always talk about the revenge factor about them blowing that game in the NFC title game to the San Francisco 49ers. So they're obviously got revenge on their mind just to get back to that game to prove that they were not, a one-season fluke sort of thing. So that's going to be interesting. And then obviously you got the Packers where it's like everybody doubted Jordan Love, me and you included. And all of a sudden he went out and he had a fantastic season, including an amazing upset win of the aforementioned Dallas Cowboys we're talking about. Like, that was absolutely awesome. Blew him out of the water.
I loved every second of that game.
That was sensational. I loved it too. I didn't catch it by any guard that this was going to happen, but I loved every second of it. And so it's like you wonder whether it's like, yeah, that can continue as well. Whether, Matt LaFleur really is the coach. Like, it wasn't just all Aaron Rodgers. He could really, coach up this young team, very young team. I think they're one of the youngest teams in the NFL. So that's going to be very interesting to see just how that team plays. And just, yeah, like I said, this is a very good NFC North matchup. I bet you is going to come down to these two teams for the NFC North title. And by week 14, like I said, this is a very strong case as far as like who's going to win the title and who's going to possibly be in contention for a wild card spot. So Thursday Night Football, week 14, book it for sure.
You'll notice that the Packers will not show up on my list anywhere because I don't know what to make of this team.
That's true.
I could completely see this team remaining a contender, and I'm a quasi Packers fan. My grandfather's a Packers fan. Oh, so like he had Brett Favre because when he first moved over from India.
Wait. So your grandfather's a Packers fan, but then your dad is a Lions fan?
Let me explain. I know. Trust me. It's very, and yeah, I'm a Colts fan. My family's.
Then you have a friend who's a Bears fan. Like, wow, this is getting interesting.
It's a very complicated dynamic. So no, when my grandfather first came over from India, he went to the University of Wisconsin.
There you go.
And that's where he discovered American football. And obviously he's a Badger fan, but also he was like, well, what pro team do I cheer for in Wisconsin? If you don't cheer for the Packers, I think they do kill you. I'm pretty sure that's state law.
It.
I'm 90% sure that's
you're ostracized for
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. At the very worst, or the very best, that's what happens. So that's why he's a Packers fan. My dad was born in Detroit though, so my grandfather wanted to stay in the North, so that's why my dad's a Lions fan. But anyway, so I grew up with freaking Brett Favre on my grandfather's Christmas tree as an ornament all year. So I'm a quasi Packers fan. So if they are legitimate contenders, I'm down for it. And look, Jordan Love makes me look like an idiot. Good for him. I love like when guys do that. It's just like, hey, look at me. I'm a millionaire now, despite what you said on your little podcast. Okay, great. Love it. I'm just not sure that's going to happen. I feel like the Packers have kind of like a little bit of a flukish feel to them. And maybe you know what? Look at the shirt I'm wearing. It's trust me, I know what a flukish team looks like. They just feel like the Miami Heat of the football world, where it's like, yeah, we did really, really well last year. Well, how'd you do this year? Yeah, we lost in 5. And it's just like it just has that feeling. And so I'm hoping so, but this also has the feel of a potential stinker of like one of those, because this happens every year where there's a primetime game where at that point in the season you're like, yeah, that looked good at the beginning of the year, I'm sure, but this sucks. I'm not watching this.
That's fair, but I've said this on the podcast many a time, but just like you can never account for divisional games because they're always going to be competitive. So
that's a good point.
You got that factor for sure. Now, I can understand that very same point that you just made about this could be a stinker, but I'm leaning more towards that this game could be a potential, candidate for being one of the top games of the season. And I'm going to go early this time. I'm going to go to week 3, Sunday night football slate, Kansas City Chiefs versus the Atlanta Falcons. So
what?
I got this as a potential. This could be a high
score
based on both of these teams. Because, I mean, when I talked about, Kansas City Chiefs, they added some firepower to their receiving group to potentially,
with
like
Arthur Smith as the, oh.
I talk about Kansas City right now, but yeah, we'll get to Atlanta, obviously. But
I was getting there, by the way.
No, for sure. But you got Kansas City, obviously. You've got the additions there with Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy. They tried to replicate that speed offense that they had, tried to replace Tyreek Hill, obviously, give Travis Kelce a little bit of, additional weapons in that passing offense. So you got that offense against now a Arthur Smith-less Falcons offense there with Raheem Morris as the new head coach. Obviously, their new offense coordinator, Zach Robinson, coming over from Sean McVay's system. So that's going to be interesting to see whether he can implement some of the same things that Sean McVay was doing back with the Los Angeles Rams to now do it with the Falcons there with their great set of skilled players with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. They traded for Rondale Moore. They signed Darnell Mooney. So I mean, they got a lot of great players. And obviously, they made the big signing in signing Kirk Cousins to add to that group to sort of, lead all of that offense there. So that's going to be very interesting to see. So I can see this being, like I said, a very back and forth, high scoring type of game that people will be looking forward to see. But yeah, I can also see the opposite where it's like, we talked about L'Jarius Sneed no longer being a member of the Chiefs. Is that going to affect their defense? You obviously got the Falcons where it's like, that was their issues. Can they control things on defense? I think they addressed it, but they didn't address it enough. I think the offseason, so that's going to be interesting to see whether they'll be able to hold up against the Chiefs offense. So it's going to be very much like which defense can sort of make some stops there in that game. But like I said, I think this got an early season early season matchup here that could lead to a potential good game.
I hope you're right, because those are, and again, this does happen every year where there's that one random primetime game. Usually it's when I'm like, I'm not watching this. And I'm like, I kind of put on mute and I'm doing work. And all of a sudden I look up, I'm like, what have I missed? Because it's like 35-31. And at the end of the third quarter, I'm like, damn it. Yeah. So like, if it's that type of game, 100% I'm down for that. Now, I have a very interesting question for you. Zach Robinson, if Atlanta does well this year, head coach next year, yes or no? Because I'm going yes. I think hotshot young coordinator, Sean McVay guy, 100% some team's going to hire him.
I don't think so. I think
it will be Carolina.
I think there's still going to be some growing pains because this is the first time, and we'll get into this in a future episode when we do our deep dive on Raheem Morris and the Atlanta Falcons on a fantasy spin. But with him being a first-time offensive coordinator, first-time calling plays, I think there's going to be some growing pains that I think there's going to be a lot that you'll like from him, but I think that he's going to be one of those guys that's like, you know what? I need to run it back one more time, really clean up some of the mistakes that I made.
He's going to pull, what's the Lions? Got Ben Johnson?
Yeah, I can see that happening. He's
going to pull Ben Johnson?
I can see that happening. Ben Johnson. I know the D'Amico Ryans did with the Niners, where it's like he got a lot of head coaching offers, but he's like, no, let me run it back one more time. And then he took the Texas job. So it's like I can see that happening with Zach Robinson as well with the Falcons. So, but yeah, so I think maybe 1 year is a little bit too premature, but yeah, 2 years for sure. Then he'll be a hot name for sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Amir, this is one thing again. I keep bringing this up. Let's talk about the placement of games.
Sure.
Okay. Because there are two that stood out to me, and get this, they're two in the same division that stood out to me of like, you poor bastards. And one of these I have truly never seen in my entire life. And I'd be interested to see if you've seen something like this. The first of the toughest stretches of schedule. So by toughest stretches, I mean toughest like series of consecutive games. Where is that placement the worst for a particular team? And like I said, this may be the worst I've ever seen. The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, that is one.
You know exactly what I'm bringing up.
I know exactly what you're bringing up.
This is okay. All right. So before I ask you if you've ever seen this, let me fill in the audience. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, first off, have a tough schedule just overall. But I've never seen anything like this. They don't play divisional opponent until week 11, which means all 6 of their divisional games are played in the final 8 weeks of the season. It doesn't stop there, though. Get this. So that means they only have 2 non-divisional foes in the final 8 weeks of the season. Those 2 foes are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles.
It's true.
That's just cruel. Like you said, like you don't know what to expect in divisional opponents. So even if, let's say, the Bengals are playing their 3rd-string quarterback yet again because they fail to put together an offensive line yet again, they're still going to play him close. And it's just like, oh my God, like I just never seen anything like that. And I honestly think maybe this is a hot take, maybe it's not. This is a season where Mike Tomlin's 20-year winning streak. I think this is where it ends. Yeah, I think this is where it ends. That is Goliath right there.
No, I saw that, and I'm trying to find. There's another team that has a very similar stretch of.
I bet you're gonna name the other team.
I'm trying to find it. I can't remember that other team, but just there's another team that has a very similar stretch. I don't know why there's these 2 teams that sort of fall into that same trap of the final 8 weeks of the season. 6 of those games are divisional games. Then you look at the Steelers. It's tough.
I've just never seen that where you don't play a single person or a single team in your division until week 11? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent, Tat. It reminds me very much of a college football schedule where it's like you have all these other slack teams to start the season. Well, not slack teams, but just like
that's what we call pulling in Alabama.
You got all these non-conference opponents to start the season, and all of a sudden, that's where you get to your meat and you play all your conference games at the back of the season. So that's exactly the way that I sort of looked at this, and I was like, this is exactly the way that it looks like. Because, like you said, they don't play their first divisional game until they play Baltimore in week 11. Then they followed up with Cleveland, then Cincinnati, then Cleveland again. Then they go to Philly. Then they travel to Baltimore. Then they play Kansas City at home. Then they close with Cincinnati. So I mean, it's just like, if you don't.
Fucked.
Yeah, so it's like you look at the first part of their schedule. They do get their bye week of week 9, so they will be, sort of rested up for that tough stretch there. But just like, it is very much. When you space out your divisional opponents, it's like you sort of get a little bit of those breathers of just like, okay, we got some time before we face them again. We can make some adjustments. Obviously, we face this team on a regular basis, but now it's like when you're facing them back to back to back, you really like. I know it's one of the it's one of the few sports where it's like if you have a loss or 2, you're kind of screwed. But in this small stretch, it's like if you have a loss there, that definitely affects so much seeding implications when all of your divisional games are at the back half of the season in the final stretch too.
Just like imagine if that happened in baseball or something where the Mets were like, a game out of the wild card and then they had to play like 3 series against Atlanta. The Mets would be looking at that like we're screwed. Like what are we supposed to do here? It's so rough. But okay, I think this might be the team you were thinking of because like I said, within the same division, a similar team also has a very tough stretch. The Cleveland Browns. They got absolutely screwed, not even in terms of their opponents, but just in terms of scheduling. If I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm like petitioning the league of like, what did you do to us?
Yeah.
Because they have if I'm not mistaken, week 10 bye week.
Yes.
And so week 10 bye week. After that week 10 bye week, not only do they have a very tough schedule, which I'll get into, they play not 1, but 2 Thursday night games. And look,
yes, they do.
Normally I hate when football players are, bitching about like, oh, our schedule's so tough and stuff. But those Thursday night games really do mess around with their schedule. So putting 2 in the final stretch of your season, I don't know what the NFL was thinking there. And let's go into their final stretch of the season. So they play after their bye week, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Steelers twice. That's not fair to Cleveland.
Yeah, that's tough sledding for sure.
Like that is going to be like, and here's the worst part is I think it's going to cost Stefanski his job, is because I can totally see like why are the Browns collapsing? What happened to the Browns? Because if you look at the first half of their schedule, it's not easy, but it's doable. So I think the Browns will be in contention, and then you'll see that quote unquote collapse, and Stefanski is going to get the heat for it, even though the NFL absolutely did that to him. I'm not saying on purpose, but he drew the short straw, and that's rough. That is rough.
It's tough for sure. Yeah. I mean, just facing all those divisional matchups at the end and just, getting the 2 Thursday night games. It's like, I know you get the extra sort of week to go and play again on Sunday. So you sort of get 10 days in between games, but still, it's just like to prepare on that short week the week before. It's like, that's just tough.
If it was one, they would not have made this list. But the fact that it's 2.
Yeah. 2
in that short of a span, that's not fair.
Nope. I agree with that.
And you still have to play with Deshaun Watson. Like, that's also not fair.
All right, Ted. So let's sort of get into the sort of the fun here of just like, sort of the annual tradition here of just the NFL schedule release video. So all the teams do it now. Before, I remember when it first started, there's only 1 or 2 that sort of started the trend. And then now all the teams are sort of doing this now. It's becoming sort of annual tradition for sure. So going through the schedule release videos, I don't know if you got a chance to see all of them, but just what were some of your favorites and what were some of your least favorites?
So I don't know if I got to see all of them, and I feel bad because I'm currently blanking on one of them I'm going to bring up. Do you want me to start with my least favorites or my favorites?
Whatever you remember. So maybe least favorites if you remember that.
So, well, no, I definitely remember my least favorites because it was the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. Okay. Maybe you can tell the audience why those were my least favorite.
No, it's fair. They're very similar in.
They're not very similar. They're the same goddamn thing.
It was essentially the same. Like, I think the Texans they're doing the ASMR thing, but then they're using like construction equipment to like smash things essentially. So it was a little different than the Chiefs one, who only used a hydraulic press. And so what they did is they just used, various items related to the specific opponent that they were playing, and so that's what got smashed in the hydraulic press. Like funny. For the States, they had a bunch of Mardi Gras beads, and that got smashed in the hydraulic press.
For our audience, here's what it was: is the Texans because the Texans also use a hydraulic one for some of it, which, by the way,
they did some of that too, but they also did some with the crane, so it was a little different. But it turned out to be the same.
I'll get into that. So which, by the way, the Chiefs were smart where they muted all the guys in the background. The Texans one, the guys were like, oh, there it is. There it is. As the hydraulic thing's crushing. It was like, would you shut up and let me enjoy the video? Like, just, yes, it is a little rubber Jaguar getting crushed. Can you just not comment on it for a second? Which, by the way, I had some very mixed reactions from me because the entire time I'm like, oh, Cap. But I don't know.
It's a very fat Jaguar, which is reminiscent of your cat.
Don't shame him. He's working on it. It's okay.
You make fun of him more than I do. So.
Okay, buddy. We'll get you some Slim Fast. It'll be all right. But anyway,
wow, what a dated reference. I thought you were gonna at least go Ozempic, but no, it was Slim Fast.
No, I'm kidding. We're not doing Slim Fast. We're doing Jenny Craig. So anyway,
but no, Jenny Craig's a little bit more relevant right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's just like completely dated.
I just don't find the whole crushing stuff funny. Like,
I
get it.
I get it.
Like, but even then, like when they were like, "Oh, Vegas," and then it was a bunch of dice and cards and stuff. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." I thought there was gonna be a bit from it, but it's like, no, it's just dice exploding. It's just like, yeah, okay. Or what was the city when maybe it was New Orleans where they crushed the chocolate coins?
San Francisco, actually, because they were gold.
That was it, though. Yeah, that was exactly it. I was like, oh, coins, that's smart. Oh, no, okay, it's just a bunch of chocolate shooting out of a hydraulic.
And then I know for the Texans one, they did for Kansas City because they played each other. They did a bottle of Kansas City barbecue sauce, but then on top of it, there was a Taylor Swift CD. So that was
okay. That one I did not notice.
You missed that one? Okay.
Yeah, I missed that one. But I will say the one that did make me laugh was, the Texans did do it better because they did a hydraulic press, but they also did one of those construction claw machines.
The crane,
yeah, the crane. And crushing the table with Buffalo. That was good.
Funny.
That was funny. I will give them credit there. I think the idea was good for the ones I liked. I think the idea was good. They could have done it better. I don't know if you saw the Broncos. Do you see what they did?
Lewis Hamilton. But the reason I didn't like that one is because the Colts did the very same thing last season where DeForest Buckner.
That's why I didn't like it because the Buckner one was better. Yes, the Buckner one was way better because
it was way better. And
by the way, who the hell doesn't like grits? When he was like, grits is prison food, I'm like, oh, you stuck up.
Well, Lewis Hamilton's British, so I don't know. Maybe that's part of it too. I have no idea.
But I like the idea.
Who cares about race car drivers?
I thought it was good. And of course, I've got to bring up, and this hurts me to say, Titans nailed it again. They did the exact same
Really?
thing. Oh, you didn't
I
like
wasn't a
it?
fan of him.
It
I
wasn't
wasn't a
as good
fan
as
of it.
last year, but I will say this for the viewers who don't know. So the Titans did the same thing of like interview on the streets thing where the people on the street had to guess or not even guess, but they like show the logo of their opponent and be like, who do you know? And I will say this. They start off fantastic and the rest of the video is downhill from there, but the start was just so goddamn good, so brilliantly produced. I loved it. So what it was, sorry to spoil it for those of you listening and watching, but it's they're interviewing this not old woman, but older woman, and she goes, "Oh, Joe Burrow." And they're like, "Oh, Joe Burrow, what you know?" And she starts spitting off like, "Oh yeah, Cincinnati Bengals. Like, hopefully you can stay healthy." And I'm like, "Okay, she knows her shit." And it's like, okay, like I personally, I was like, I did not know the Titans were playing the Bengals this year. And then it just cuts to week 1. It was the Bears.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I started cracking up during my lunch break, and my coworker was like, "What was so funny?" I was like, I can't explain it. So like, I don't know. I just think that's just so great. And that's perfect proof that they don't cherry pick like, Jimmy Kimmel clearly does, who does
Sure.
other man on the street stuff. So I actually enjoyed the Titans repeating that bit.
I think because it was so much better last year and so like
It was so
nobody
much better
expected it,
last year.
it
Yeah,
was like for them to do the same bit this year, I was like, yeah, it was all right. It's very similar to like the Chargers doing anime 2 years in a row. It was like I like the first one.
that's
It was
fair.
like that was so novel and so cool. And like the second year was also pretty cool, but it's like you did it last year. You could have done something different. So
And
we'll obviously talk about the Chargers video this year because they did something completely different too.
well, and on this note, not what the Chargers did via video, but what they did on Twitter, I don't think the Pop Tarts thing hit as hard this year. I didn't find the Pop Tarts
Yeah,
bit
so
as funny.
also the big thing that I saw this year too is that along with the scheduled release video, there were teams that did like the Twitter thread, and there were like teams as far as like I know one
Some of
team
them
did
were hilarious, like the
some of them did
trash
like
Pop Tart with the
yeah,
Raiders.
did
That
like
was
yeah, the
hilarious,
Pop
but
Tarts
like
one, that's I've seen that quite a bit as well. So but yeah, obviously, were you a fan of the Sims video with the Chargers?
I will say the one bit, and sorry if I'm stepping on your notes here, but the
No,
one
no,
bit
no.
I did find funny because this was a last minute change was putting Harrison Butker in the
Oh
kitchen
yeah,
was
of course.
that was like just chef's kiss, goddamn genius.
Yeah,
I was
no, of
like,
course.
whatever intern came up with that deserves an absolute raise to PR director right now because that was a great bit, and that was like 48 hours after that speech.
That's true. It's true. So I think they edited very last second. And believe me, I worked in sports, and so did you. That's like some things are very last minute. It's like, oh, we got to do this because this is happening here.
Well, that's why I'm just like that. That intern woke up on Sunday morning and they're like, we need to include this. And he's just, God damn it. And like, I had to go into the office on Sunday. It was like,
No, it's true. It's true. So yeah, I wasn't going to pick the Chargers as my favorite. Like it was very good. I think it's very similar to what they did in previous years, where it's like they did it as the Sims this year, so I mean, they had lots of various scenes of poking fun at a lot of teams. I think that was the big thing. So it's like they had
the Panthers as a wrestler going in the ring, thinking they're tough shit, and then they just get like absolutely beat up.
Yeah, that was funny. And then obviously you got the Raiders with them being dressed as clowns, and then there's the QR code.
I thought that was a little on the nose.
The QR code, I don't know if you know this, Tab, it's like if you scan the QR code, it goes to like this clown store or whatever, like in the middle of New Jersey or something like that. So it just played onto that joke further. And so it's like, yeah, it was not bad. And obviously you got the Harrison Butker thing at the very end, which I'm pretty sure, like we talked about, was thrown in as like, we need to capture this.
So good.
Not bad. Not bad. I'm surprised you didn't talk about the Jaguars one. I'm surprised you weren't a bigger fan of that one.
I don't think I saw that one.
Really? That was the X-Men, like they did a play on X-Men 97.
The X-Men one?
Yeah, that's what I'm surprised
you talk about it. You talk about it. I'm gonna look it up.
But yeah, it obviously it was trying to play into X-Men 97, so it's got the graphics there, and it's like playing on the anniversary, obviously, because the Jaguars are expansion team in 1995. So this is their 30th anniversary. So that's why it's sort of like they're tying there because you got a little kid watching a TV, and then it plays this video of the schedule release, and so they do the animations to sort of play into all the different characters from X-Men. They're not the exact characters, obviously. They obviously did get the licensing rights there, so but it was pretty well done. I like the sort of animations there.
I mean, to be fair, it took Marvel like 20 years just to get those back.
No, of course, yeah. So it's like it's a good homage, and obviously playing into something that's current. So I was a good fan of that one. It may not be everybody's favorite, but I was actually a fan of the Brown schedule release video. I don't know if you saw that one, Tab, but it was played in a bowling alley. So there's a bunch of like bowling related stuff, and then it closes out with Pete Weber at the very end. PBA great, PBA icon. I'm pretty sure, Tad, about Pete Weber, the who do you think you are? I am. Like, that's Pete Weber. So it's like they had him.
You mean the greatest bowler of all time?
Oh, no, of course. I just thought maybe you didn't know who he was. So just like, yeah. So that would appeal to me because growing up, I was a big bowling geek. So, I loved, I knew Pete Weber before he became like Pete Weber now. That's how much I was a bowling idiot that I was back then. So that was really cool. I really liked that one. I was actually kind of a fan of the Colts one. I thought that was kind of clever with them going into the children's. I don't know if you watched it, Tad, but it's like them going into the classroom and then making fun of Anthony. That kid is like, Anthony, the Jaguar's not orange. And then he gets ripped on by the other kids. I thought that was kind of funny. So it wasn't that bad. Everybody loved the New England Patriots one where it's Good Jules Hunting, where it's like they have Julian Edelman and he's playing Matt Damon's character from
I love that
Hunting.
one was good.
That one was not bad. I was all right with that one. That was all right. The dad joke one with the Pittsburgh Steelers trying to make James Harrison. They called him Debo, so it's like
That
James
was
Debo
great.
Harrison. I like some of the jokes, and I loved how scared some of the players are. It's like, yo, this guy's not laughing. I think he's gonna strangle me. I thought that was hilarious, where they're physically scared of James Harrison about to kill them. So I thought that was pretty good. Had a lot of cameos in a lot of videos because we had the Cowboys where they were doing a bunch of FaceTime to random people.
I thought the Cowboys one was a little too try hard.
It might have been, but it's like relating that to some of the other videos where it's like you had the Saints video where they're trying to find a new intern to just get you released. So they're like reaching out to Derek Carr, they called Drew Brees, and they called a bunch of other people. So there's lots of cameos, celebrity cameos. The Packers did the same thing where they had a bunch of fans for a pep rally. So it's like Braun Strowman, what WWE wrestler was there. They had John Kuhn, former fullback, was there. They had a lot of cameos there. So it's like that seemed to be a trend with all the videos this well. Chicago, I like theirs. I'm surprised. Did you see Chicago's?
I did not.
Chicago's was when they sort of did an homage to 80s movies. So they had DJ Moore sort of play like a.
Did they do Breakfast Club?
Yes. So that was part of it.
Okay.
That was part of it. So it's like homage to John Hughes movie. So it's like DJ Moore was like the Ferris Bueller type character. And then they did like the Breakfast Club thing there. So it's like that was part of it too. So it's like that was pretty well done. They had the guy from New Girl, Jake Johnson, that he was the narrator.
Jake Johnson, who all my friends compare me to, by the way.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So he was the narrator. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, overall, there was a good mix. I actually liked the Niners schedule release video this year. It was actually better compared to some of their years past. I don't know, Tad, if you're familiar with who Rita Oak is.
No, is that why I didn't get it? Because I watched it, I was like, eh.
Maybe. So she became very popular among Niners Reddit because before Jimmy Garoppolo got traded, she was like, I'm going to draw a picture of Jimmy Garoppolo for every day he doesn't get traded. And so she made all these pictures. She's from Portugal too. So it's like, this is like an international fan. And they eventually flew her out here because she got so popular. So she's drawing all these pictures. And then after he got traded, she was like, I'm going to draw a picture for every day that the Niners don't win a Super Bowl. So she just kept growing the trend there. Obviously, they did it with Super Bowl. So just
is she still doing it?
I think she is still doing it.
Her right hand is going to fall off.
So these pictures were an homage to things that she has done in the past, or maybe she did this specifically for this video. So I like that they sort of played into their fan support there. So bigger fan of their schedule release this video too. So ones I wasn't a fan of, the Seattle Seahawks one, that was pretty stupid. It was
see that one.
They put out it's Tariq Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, and Charles Cross. They're sitting in a room, and there's this pair of sunglasses that's all bedazzled up so you can't see through it. But they put it on, and it's they get time traveled. But then when Tariq Woolen wears it, he could go super fast. And when Charles Cross wears it, he does something else. So it's supposed to be called Enter the Schedule Verse. So it's supposed to be a superhero game, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty terrible.
No, see, here's the thing. That might have been good 2 years ago because I was watching the Jaguars one while you were talking. And first off, that just shows how good the X-Men theme is, because watching any type of X-Men animation without the theme, you're like, oh, this is kind of bad.
That's fair. But once again, no licensing rights. So.
But anyway, that would have been a really good reference 2 or 3 years ago.
That's fair. So yeah, overall, that was not a big hit for me. But I totally forgot. I love the Falcons one because they did an homage to NFL Street, the video game. Ted, I don't know if you ever played that game.
Is that what they were trying to do? Because I did watch the Falcons one, and I'm like, they're trying something. I'm just not getting the reference. And I could just tell when he's like, "Don't worry, Bijan," and he throws the ball back at him. The fuck are we doing here?
Yeah. So I think all the like dialogue part, it wasn't as accurate because once again, I'm pretty sure it's like licensing rights and all that stuff, right? But it was supposed to be a play off of the NFL Street video game, which is a fantastic game. A lot of people are saying that.
See, when the Colts do a Blitz the League spoof where they're injecting Anthony Richardson with God knows what, that's when I'm all in.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, I know a lot of people with the release of NCAA this summer. A lot of people like next game that has to be revitalized is NFL Street. So
nope.
We'll see about that.
Blitz the League is so much better.
If you played NFL Street, you'll maybe.
I never did. I never did.
That's fair.
It was like 2 years too early for me.
Maybe. But all right, so that's our discussion of the NFL schedule. We got through obviously some of our favorite games, got through both of our respective favorite team schedules, and obviously got through the schedule release videos, got through a lot of those. But yeah, very, very fun episode. But guys, I mean, we're going to be going heavy with the fantasy content. We're definitely going to be turning up the knob with giving you a lot of great content as we sort of come up in the next handful of weeks. Like we talked about, we sort of got into it with Zach Robinson, but we're dedicating a whole episode to new head coaching hires, giving it a fantasy spin, how that can affect your decisions and how you can affect your strategy when it comes to drafting your fantasy roster in the summer. So guys, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, wherever it's your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so it's up to date with those YouTube videos as well. And please, guys, we may have a few filler weeks too where we can fill in with other content. So interact with us on our social media handles. You got me at OtherSide23. You got Tad at TadSide94. Got the show handle at The Side Guys. And of course on Instagram at The Side Guys as well. Hit us up if there's some particular stuff that you want us to talk about when it comes to fantasy stuff, when it comes to non-fantasy stuff, whatever it is. We're here to support you and give you the analysis that you need. And so, yeah, we may have a few weeks where we could fill in some other content. So, yeah, hit us up with what you want us to talk about. We'll try our best to address all those things. And guys, please make sure you support our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the professional level, and the Bruins and the Trojans when it comes to the college level. So lots of great content coming from all the great content producers from LAFB Network. But guys, to everybody who's already listening to the podcast, who's watching the videos, who's interacting with us on social media, who's, anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we just can't thank you enough.
And hey, don't forget that we are some of the top betting experts with the LAFB network. So I know the NBA finals are coming up. The NHL Stanley Cup. There's a lot of N's in there. All right, man.
No, it is.
The NBA finals are coming up. The NHL Stanley Cup is coming up. And yes, I have actually been watching a fair amount of hockey over the last couple of weeks. So if you have or if you need some betting advice, let us know. Hit us up on those DMs, either on Instagram, on Twitter, or otherwise. And we will do our best to help you out. We may even do an episode or maybe even a YouTube short or two over those. So if you have any ideas for those, any advice you want, let us know. And, hey, if you want us to create content specified towards you, now is the time to do it, because once July and August start rolling around, we're too busy to do it. So you got only a couple months to let us know what content you want from us. So we want to make you guys happy because you guys have done a great job of following us, listening to us, viewing us, and we want to return the thank you, giving you the content that you would like to watch. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay safe, everyone.